Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Point Spread. I'm Travis Justice, and just to give you kind of the lay of the land, we're going to be talking about 5 games tonight, starting with the National Football League, moving on to college football. So if you're new, sit back and enjoy it. We hope you are entertained and, of course, get a lot of information. If you are a regular viewer of the Behind the Point Spread show, make sure to hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, because the more we can grow, the more you can see our content. And speaking of content, if you haven't watched last week's Doc Talk podcast, take time to do it. Good stuff in there, especially when it comes to the Illinois game this week. And then a little teaser for you. Usually I don't like to tease too far ahead, but Rob and I just got off the phone with Frank Solich. And coming up the next couple days, we're going to have a podcast with former Nebraska coach Frank Solich, who was more than gracious to give his time to us tonight. And it was a fun conversation, and it was good to catch up with Coach Solich, as he was just back in Lincoln a couple weeks ago, of course, for the Colorado game. Let's bring in the boys, shall we? To my left is the one and only Vegas insider, former Bellevue East chieftain, Scott Spreitzer.
Wait. That's our rival. I was a Bellevue West Thunderbird.
Why did I think you went to Bellevue East?
Wow. I don't know. Come on. I can't be nice when it comes to talking, placing me at Bellevue East. Usually I'm a nice guy, but now you're rough on the feathers.
You know, I've never seen Scott jump and get all upset. That's the first time he's yelled at me. He's never yelled at me before, Rob.
Oh, gosh.
I'm laughing.
Here's the thing. I haven't even been drinking yet tonight. That's the crazy thing.
There's the problem.
Oh, you see? Yeah. What are you drinking? What are you drinking there, Rob?
This is the last of our buddy Mark Weber, who he's his son played for Augustana. We had his beer on the podcast this past week. So little Talking Waters Brewery out of Montevideo, Minnesota.
Nice. Nice.
So great little brewery up there. So this is their milk stout, and it is outstanding.
Cody wrote in tonight. He already said, what's Doc's handle going to be this week? And he's already taken a shot at the Illinois fans. Red Grange wasn't that good. You're going deep in the history book for this one now. When you go back to Red Grange, dude, you are going way back in time.
I like to pick out guys who can't stand up and defend themselves. Which I've actually, you know what, I've got a lot of love for Illini football, because when I was with the Giants, we had one of our O-linemen was an Illini grad, and I had the honor of being in his wedding, and just a great guy. But yeah, you kind of meet a few of those. You meet a few of those guys. Had an opportunity to meet Dick Butkus. That was really, really cool. I mean,
was it over the grill using newspaper as fire and coal? Remember when he was doing the old I forget the name of that grill, but he would be at the tailgate. Yeah. He goes, just grill your meat with newspaper.
Well, this is one of those. I mean, that was an era though where, I mean, you look at guys like him. I mean, it was that grill commercial. It was the old, what was it, the Miller Lite Great Taste Less Filling commercials. Yeah. Like I always thought of, like when I was a little kid, I always thought of him as a pitch man. I thought he was a commercial pitch man.
He was a badass linebacker, is what he was.
You didn't think of him as arguably the scariest freaking linebacker in the history of college football or the NFL.
You know, Scott Spreitzer. I got news to our listeners and viewers, and that is, if you want really good advice, you listen to Scott Spreitzer. Last week we were talking about the Chiefs-Bengals game. He flat out told you. Take Isaiah Pacheco and the over 63 yards. I think he went for 90. If you're a fantasy football player, don't listen to Scott, because Pacheco breaks his fibula in the middle of the game before the end of the game. You got your money.
I was watching a couple of other games, and I see the stream come across the bottom that Isaiah Pacheco's injured, and I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't want to see any player get injured. That's number one. But of course, when you're betting, solid money on these games and these props and things, and I'm going, oh man. So I look real quick, I'm going 99 yards. Okay, well, it sucks that he's hurt and he's out for a while. They went out, they got Kareem Hunt to replace Isaiah Pacheco, but what an important and key cog to the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, my gosh. So we got it done, but unfortunately he got injured, and it's not something you get over with in a week or two, obviously.
It all pays the same though, right?
pays the same. It didn't pain me to collect. I'll tell you that much. Can't say that every game or every day in the NFL lately, but it sure was a nice one to cash.
If you want to work with Scott on a regular basis, all you have to do is text the word Doc Talk to the number 29022 and get the free $60 trial of premium member picks from Scott, or visit docsports.com and sign up for the free 60 on the upper left hand of the website. You're not going to be disappointed. Of course, we're going to be talking about a lot of games tonight. We're going to start with in the NFL. We're going to talk about the Ravens and the Cowboys. Move on to college football, where there's a good Big 12 showdown between Utah and Oklahoma State. Big Ten action. Yes, Big Ten action. USC, I still can't get used to that. They're going to take on Michigan. You got the fight for the pig, the battle for the pig, Iowa at Minnesota. And, of course, we'll wrap things up tonight with Illinois and Nebraska. Well, this is pretty good games to talk about. I like our slate tonight. Do you?
Yeah, I love the games. And I'm with you. I can't wait to see a conference game in the Rose Bowl. Is it the Rose Bowl? Or they played at USC. It's at UCLA or at USC this year, but I'll be in LA for that one. Nice. Conference game for Nebraska in Los Angeles. I mean, you got to love it.
Don't forget, this is a call-in show, so if you want to call in and ask Scott, Dr. Rob, or myself any question, you can do so. 402-543-5556. Again, that's 402-543-5556. So let's go ahead and get started tonight. Our first game on the docket is going to be in the National Football League. The Baltimore Ravens are going to go to the Cowboys. The Cowboys opened the season with a big win right after Dak Prescott signed his big contract. Last week, the Cowboys don't look so good. Scott, it is so easy, and I mean easy, to hate the Cowboys.
I've hated the Cowboys since I was a kid. I was a Vikings fan growing up, and that was before I even, started dabbling with the point spread. But, this Baltimore team, I mean, we do a thing called the luck factor when it comes to all the NFL teams. This team has been about as unlucky as it gets. When you outgain two opponents by 100 yards each, a little bit more than that last week against the Raiders, and you're 0-2, you're getting some bad luck, some bad coaching when it comes to the clock, which happened in a couple of the games last week again, or you're just having a turnover situation. Now they're up 10, 23, 13 in the fourth quarter. They're cruising against a weak Las Vegas Raiders squad that they should beat 10 out of 10, not just 9 out of 10 times, getting 6.3 yards per play, holding the Raiders in check. And then all of a sudden they find themselves on the losing end at the end of the game. Right now, they're going to have to do something about Lamar's passing. He's 18th in passer rating, 19th if you include Malik Willis and his one start last week for Green Bay. So you got that going on. And then you've got a team that's 32nd against the pass talking about Baltimore right now. So they're going to have to shore up some issues. The problem with Dallas, I heard somebody talking about this the other day, and I think it's the right analysis. They were kind of talking about Mike Tyson when he said once, everybody's got a plan until they get popped in the nose or something along those lines. That's the Dallas Cowboys. You pop this team early in the nose, and man, they wilt. There was another show I was watching that said this team's like a bunch of country clubbers. It's like they're, a country club football team, and they're not tough. I happen to think that way. They've lost 4 of their last 7. They've only covered 2 of those 7 games. 3 of the 4 losses came by 25, 16, and 21 points. They were outscored by an average of 41-20 in those 3 defeats. Listen, the offensive line for the Ravens hasn't been overly trustworthy as of yet. I think they get their win this week. They're 0-2. You don't go 0-3. I think since the 17-game schedule has come about, it's something like only 2 of 21 teams that have made it to the postseason after starting 0-2. So imagine how tough it's going to be if they start 0-3. I think Baltimore gets the job done. They've been one of the most unluckiest teams in the NFL thus far.
You know what happens when you say bad things about the Cowboys, and that is take the boys at home as a dog. Whenever Dallas sucks and the public goes against them, the following week, Dallas tends to surprise and cover the line.
Okay. I don't give a crap what the public does.
I know it won't be a factor in Dallas because of the roof, but as we get into our college football games, Alex wants to know, hey guys, Alex from Idaho. Nice. Then thanks for listening in Idaho, Alex. Can you ask Scott how much the weather factors into betting?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'll tell you the thing that affects it the most for me is I'll start looking at the forecast like Tuesday for Saturday college football and Sunday NFL. But here's the thing. If I see like a team or 2 teams playing each other that can sling the ball around with a strong passing game, and it says it's going to rain, cool with that. What's the wind going to be like? If it's, 25, 30 mile an hour gust, I'm not even coming close to playing the over or the team that's overly dependent on the pass. But if it's calm, 8 to 10 miles per hour, basically from start to finish, and I use AccuWeather, by the way, the folks who want to get a real good read on their handicapping on the weather, AccuWeather has been the best I can find. For baseball, it's I'll have to find it for you for baseball, but AccuWeather is the best. But anyway, if I got a team that's a good passing team and the winds are 8 to 10 miles per hour, but it's raining, I have no problem playing that passing team. Receivers know where they're going to cut. Defensive backs, corners, maybe not. And if you get a weak defensive backfield against those receivers, a lot of times those DBs are slipping a little bit on some of those cuts. So if the wind is blowing a lot, I'm looking to play unders. I'm looking to play against passing teams. So again, I start looking on Tuesdays. And if I see a forecast that's supposed to be a little questionable, I just keep looking at it every day. So it does affect things for me. And sometimes we get burnt because, there's times I bet a lot of games on Sunday night, Monday morning for the next weekend of action. And a lot of times you don't have great weather forecast for that next week yet. And then it comes close to weekend and all of a sudden, there's a hurricane. And so you got to make adjustments with your bets, hedge a little bit the other way, things like that. But it's a good question. It's something you got to follow. AccuWeather.com, punch in the city where the game's going to be. You can look hourly, daily, the whole thing.
Rob, while we're on the NFL, we got a question for you and your beloved Giants. This comes from a fat guy in Des Moines, and I always say that because he's a friend of mine. Dr. Rob, do the Giants trade?
I love Sean. He's like Iowa's resident Giants fan.
He is. He was named after Phil Simms. It's Sean Phillip Roberts, I believe it is. So he's a big Giants fan, but he understands the problems that the Giants are going through right now. He wants to know if they trade for Bryce Young.
Okay, well, there's a question between do they or should they? Should they? Yes. Do they? No way in hell. I love the Giants. I love the fact that they're this old school organization, that they're this really, really conservative organization. I don't know if I've ever seen them make a major in-season move like something like that. It's that now. Okay, well, Mike just jumped in here where he said Giants' problem is not quarterback. I do have some questions about Daniel Jones. Mike's right, though. That offensive line is atrocious. It is a horrible, horrible offensive line, and Jones does not have time to do anything that he needs to do. At the same time, they don't have any running game. I'm gonna piss the Saquon fans off here because I'm a huge Saquon Barkley fan. 90% of the Giants' run game woes are not Saquon. It's that offensive line. They're horrible. Saquon's an amazing running back. You put Saquon behind that disaster of an offensive line, that's going to be a disaster of a running back. I know Saquon had the one dropped pass during Monday night in that Monday Night Football game, but you know what? Philly's going to love Saquon. He's going to be a gamer for him, and he's going to do very well. He's got a really, really good offensive line. He's got a good offense on the whole. He's got a great quarterback. They got some great wide receivers. He'll do well there. Just stuff he didn't have in New York. But, I mean, it all starts up front with that offensive line, and the Giants' biggest issue has been woes on the offensive line.
Scott, I saw the drop ball.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Travis.
When you saw the drop ball that Saquon, were you throwing stuff at the TV because you had money on the Monday night game?
I actually passed Monday Night Football this week, but I'm watching that and I'm like, Rob, I love Saquon Barkley, one of my favorite backs in the last decade.
I liked him when he was at Penn State, and I'm not a Penn State fan.
Neither am I. I'm not a Penn State guy, and he's just been one of my favorite backs since he's got even when he was in college. But I'm watching that game the other night. He drops the ball, but there was Nick Sirianni game clock screw-ups again that helped cost this team. Now, obviously, if Barkley makes the catch, they win the football game. But you mentioned it, man. Being able to get Barkley on the Eagles roster is what had me thinking that Philly's going to be a playoff team, and now Philly's got a chance to represent the NFC again. That's what I think of Saquon Barkley coming to this team. As far as the Giant, why would you want Bryce Young? Rob, you're an offensive lineman. What do you do? This he's not a rookie, and he's running into pressure. I mean, he's like running into pressure. And I'm looking
hate
at
it when quarterbacks do that, but
what the hell?
a lot of them do it, though. A lot of them do it. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens in New York. I just this year, I mean, I'm already looking at the Giants this year and going, this is not that year. I mean, you look at that game against the Redskins. Oh, I'm still saying it. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Washington. When you look at the game against, I can't say Commanders.
No.
When you look at the Washington game, what was it that they set a record for? At no point in NFL history is a team who has scored all touchdowns lost against a team who has scored only field goals. How do you do that? That's the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen. So, which actually, hey, I got a side. This is a total tangential question for Scott here.
Sit back. It's gonna be about 5 minutes.
I know it's going to take a while. Sorry. So there's the old, most people ascribe it to Bill Walsh. It's the 2-point conversion formula. Mm-hmm. If you're ahead by X amount or if you're behind by X amount, you go for 2 points. So the Giants in that game were behind by X amount. They score a touchdown, go for 2, don't get it. Mm-hmm. Now that automatically puts you into the formula no matter what. So they get a second touchdown, go for 2, don't get it. Get a third touchdown, go for 2, don't get it. They scored 3 touchdowns, only scored 18 points off of those 3 touchdowns. Washington gets 7 field goals and scores 21 points. I played again. We played this when I was with the Giants. We played the Seattle Seahawks in the old Kingdom. Doesn't even exist anymore. This was it was 95 or 96. We hit that same formula where we came from behind to take a lead, but that formula dictated that we were supposed to go for 2. So we go for 2, don't get it. We still got the lead, no big deal. We score another touchdown, go for 2, don't get it, still have the lead. It's a little bit of a back and forth game. Get a third touchdown, don't get it. Go for 2, don't get it. So same thing happened. Now we had a couple of field goals in there. I think there was maybe even a 4th touchdown. Bottom line is I think it was 3 2-point conversion attempts, all while we had the lead. Didn't convert any of them. Mm-hmm. Seattle comes from behind, wins the game by 1 point. How do you as a handicapper look at that 2-point conversion formula? Is that something that bears out where you're like, oh yeah, you definitely should go to 2 if you're up by this or down by this, or is it more of a, and you really got to play the situation? And unless my thought after experiencing that was always wait till the end of the game.
Yeah. And
if you need to go for 2 at the end, go for 2, but otherwise just kick the extra point, get the surefire point and move on.
Yeah. I'm kind of like, the metrics say you're supposed to go for 2, or you're supposed to go for it on 4th and 4 at the other team's 45-yard line. I really think it's situational. If you're the New York Giants, your offense is not playing well. You don't go for 2. You kick the extra point.
Agreed.
In the game, and you have to go for 2. So I definitely, as you guys know me, we've talked about metrics a lot. I certainly believe in metrics, but at the same time, I think things have to be situational. I was, last Thursday when Buffalo played Miami, I put out a video, gave out the Buffalo Bills, had a small action on it myself. So they're skating, they're winning. And it's like late second quarter, maybe early third. So Miami can still, come back. Tua wasn't injured yet. And I'm watching Mike Macdonald, offensive genius, Mike Macdonald, and he's got that laminated play chart in front of him. And he's like this the whole time. It's like this. And I'm like, do these and watch the freaking game. I'm serious. It's like situations. Sometimes you got to scrap what you plan to do. Things aren't going your way. Things certainly weren't going Miami's way. So it's like sacrifice bunt in baseball. If you want to just be completely raw mathematics, you never sack bunt with the guy on first and nobody out, because you got 0.0025% better chance of swinging away and scoring than you do sack bunt and giving up an out. But there are times in the game in the ninth inning when you're trailing by one or tied where it's smart, depending on the batter, to sack bunt. So I believe in the metrics. I start there, but I switch to situations from the metrics. And the New Orleans Saints the last 2 weeks, I'm going for 2. If I'm the New Orleans Saints, that offense is clicking all over the place, run or pass. But the New York Giants can't get out of their own way on offense. There's no way I'm going for 2. Kick the extra point unless you're down by 2 late in the game and you've scored to try to tie it up.
All right, let's dive into college football. Our next game up is going to be out of the Big 12. This is a good showdown between Utah. The Utes going to Oklahoma State, a Saturday 3 o'clock game on Fox. The Utes a 2-point favorite and the over-under at 54 here.
Yeah, this line's been all over the place because of Cam Rising. Utah opened 2. It was said that he wasn't going to play in all likelihood. He was listed as doubtful, so Oklahoma State was adjusted to 2, and now Cam Rising is expected to play, and now Utah is back to being a 2-point favorite in this one, and you see the total there on your screen. The bottom line is you throw out a practice game, if you will, against Southern Utah, and the Utah Utes, boy, they've won games, but the offense has been so-so. It's been okay. I know Cam Rising's been playing with a hand injury when he's been on the field. You got Michael Bernard, who has been tearing it up on the ground. We do know that. Solid run blocking offensive line. And as far as Oklahoma State, they've been bad on defense as far as stopping the run, giving up almost 160 yards per game on the ground at like 4.5 yards per pop. So Oak State's got to do something about that. And then there's the concern that Utah did struggle against Utah State. Not a good team this year. A Utah State team, by the way, that lost 48-0 to Southern Cal earlier this season. But again, I worry about Oklahoma State's defense against the run. Here's the thing. If Oklahoma State can get Ollie Gordon in the end zone, one of the best backs in the nation, they're 12-0 when he scores a rushing touchdown. But Ollie Gordon is not running well right now, and it's not his fault. 3.5 yards per carry this team. 112th in rushing yards per game, Oklahoma State. 61 for 188, 3 yards per carry the last 2 games. I don't know what's going on with Oklahoma State up front, but you got to get Ollie Gordon 15, at least 15 carries, if not more, and start getting them some yardage. I was reading some write-ups that are talking about Oklahoma State winning this game, which I got no problem. This is a toss-up game. But they were saying Ollie Gordon's dominating. And I'm like, okay, 41 yards on 17 carries against Tulsa, 49 yards on 17 carries against Arkansas. That's hardly dominating. He did his damage against South Dakota State, but his last 2 games, 2.65 yards per carry. Having said that, and the reason it makes it tough, Utah doesn't win on the road in big games. They're 1-5 against top-notch teams away from home, and Cam Rising is only 5-4 on the road in his career. So those come into play. You've got an Oklahoma State team that's covered 5 in a row as a home underdog. They're 11-4-1 against the spread against ranked opponents. It's an ever so small lean on Oklahoma State. It won't be a bet for me, and it's basically because I don't know if we can trust Oklahoma State up front on offense quite yet.
Makes a lot of sense. Of course, if you are watching right now and you have a question for Scott or Dr. Rob, call 402-543-5556. Or if you want to leave some comments, if you're on YouTube and Facebook, you can just put a comment in the comment section, pops right up. And as you've seen, we'll be more than happy to put that comment on and get your question asked. Our next game is going to go to the Big Ten. Yes, Big Ten. It's still hard for me to say this, but SC, Southern Cal, Lincoln Riley picked up another big recruit today. I think the number 4-star wide receiver is going to the Big House. I even before the season started, I said Michigan's not going to be very good. I still think Michigan's going to finish outside the top 25 when the season is over, Scott. And they are a 5.5 point underdog at home with that over-under at 44.
Yeah, and Moore is already throwing in the towel when it comes to Davis Warren. We're going to see the backup, so to speak, in Alex Orji, which means they're not going to be throwing the football much. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I wish Warren was starting because I'd be on USC without blinking an eye, without thinking twice. You know, my grandfather, Leo Spreitzer, used to say, crap in one hand, wish in the other, see which one fills up first. But that's kind of the case here. But Alex Orji, this guy's thrown 6 passes. He's completed 3 for 15 yards. It's going to be a whole lot of running plays for Michigan. Try to play stout defense. I've even heard talk of going almost straight option with Michigan's offense this week. So that gives USC a little bit of a step back in trying to decide how we're going to defend this team. It's not exactly the same that they've seen under Davis Warren on tape. Have seen a little bit of Alex Orji, but not a lot. So this USC defense is night and day better than it was last year. You got a great coach in Riley who just took a couple of years to really get it going there and get his players into LA. But I look at this Michigan defense that gets a lot of pats on the back and credit. They're getting no pressure on the quarterback right now. I mean, really zero pressure. And then last week, they only beat Arkansas State 28-18. That's a little scary. It shows you that they're probably going to be too dependent on their defense trying to get after USC in this one. I think eventually USC pulls away. Now, I got a couple of really sharp friends in town who are backing Michigan big this week. And that line was as high as 6.5 earlier this week. And they're two of the reasons why this number got knocked down. And I'll tell you a little bit about why. Over the summer, Michigan was more than a touchdown favorite for this game. And then, of course, last week before the games were played, it was 3. USC was the 3-point favorite, and they got all the way up to 6.5, now down to 5.5 in most books. Having said that, and in all due respect to a lot of sharp people, I just think USC is going to be a little bit too tough in the second half of this game once they figure out what Alex Orji is doing on offense, figure out the little bit of option that they're going to run apparently, and USC ends up winning the game by 10.
Game Dog says, "Hey, what the hell happened to Michigan's secondary?" I mean, they lost a ton of players too, right?
And I think part of that also is the lack of pass rush. I mean, they're getting no pressure basically. And so you've got a team that, half the team went to the NFL in the offseason, a brand new football coach, not as good as Harbaugh, who is. And then you throw in the mix that they're not getting any help up front, on a lot of passing downs, talking about a young secondary. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Boy, this scares me if you're Michigan, because this kid, Miller Moss, I mean, use an adjective of your choice, electric, exciting. He knows what he's doing out there. And Lincoln Riley can coach the heck out of a quarterback, as we know.
Rob Cody wants to know, does Husker Hound sell the Big 8 T-shirts that you're wearing? I mean, that's a popular T-shirt.
I do know Scott has carried them before. I don't know if he's got them in stock right now, but all you got to do is call the store. They'll tell you. I mean, and Scott does a really good job of getting stuff in quick. So,
if you want
last time I was there was the morning before the Colorado game, and I actually wore this shirt in the store. So
it's a good looking shirt. That's a great looking logo too. That's retro. Up next,
it's a great looking shirt.
The Fight for the Pig. This is one of the 10th oldest trophy game in the country. Another Big Ten battle. Iowa coming off a win over Troy. They were down at halftime. Looked good in the second half. Minnesota has won 2 in a row since opening and 2 straight shutouts, by the way. I look at this game, Scott, and of course, I'm on Iowa's side here. But for Iowa's run the ball 123 times in 3 games already. Caleb Johnson's going for about 150, 160 yards a game. Minnesota has a defense like to run the football. This game may take like 2.5 hours. I mean, the over-under should be like, how long is this game going to take? Because it could go quick.
You're watching their games, and you're obviously watching them and broadcasting during these games, Iowa Hawkeye games every week. And I'm thinking, were they playing 6 quarters to get to that 36? It's just going to be probably one of those games. I will say this for Iowa. They are getting better offensively. How could you not this year? We've talked about this offensive coordinator before, but, they're gaining over 400 yards. That game last week in the first half, I'm like, I might as well just throw everything out I thought about Iowa, before the season began, when I saw what was going on in the first half against Troy. Last year, these two teams set college football back to before the forward pass. If you guys remember that, 12-10. One touchdown.
It wasn't a fair catch, by the way. It was not.
I remember that. That's right. He caught it.
It was totally a fair catch.
Shut up.
No fair catch. You're right. No fair catch. But other than that,
just because Iowa hates the rules.
Oh, please! He was waving it off, Rob. This is a fair catch, not this.
True. I agree with Travis on this one.
Thank you, Scott.
I actually do too. It was a bad call.
Thank you.
You know what? The passing game's still a bore. I mean, come on.
It is.
I thought they'd be a little bit more dynamic with the passing game. And, if you look at this team and what they've done, I mean, they ran well against the Cyclones, but they missed on 16 of 29 passes a couple of weeks ago, 99 yards, gave up a couple of picks. So McNamara comes in averaging just over 5 yards per pass. That's not the team I thought we would see at this point of the season. Minnie's defense, okay, they've given up 0 touchdown passes, and they've got 7 picks. So I don't think all of a sudden you're going to see McNamara going deep. I think it's going to have to be short passes, mix it up with the run, a little bit of play action, because Minnesota's secondary right now is playing great football. I think the number's right, guys. 2.5 Iowa. I thought basically anything under 3, if I had to make a play, I'd back the Hawkeyes. Anything over 3, I'd back the other side, the Gophers. So you can see I'm kind of going back and forth here, but I think 2.5's right. Maybe the under.
I have to say this. When it comes to this rivalry, I mean, Minnesotans hate Iowans. Iowans hate Minnesotas. Rob, you have to give this one to me. I think it was 2002. It's the greatest FU to a fan base on the road ever when Iowa won in the old Metrodome and stormed the field and took the goalpost out of the Metrodome. You got to admit, for an opposing team to do that, that's pretty cool.
That's about as Iowa as you can get, though. Because here's the thing. No one cared.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, outside of the state of Iowa, no one cared.
And by the way, you're right, Scott.
Wait, who was the Iowa quarterback that year?
Oh, would that have been?
Was that Banks?
It might have been Banks that year. He's a pretty good quarterback, by the way.
He was a pretty good quarterback.
And Scott, you're right. McNamara is not going to go long because he can't go long. He does not. He can't. He can't throw the long ball. I mean, he's good in the first and second, levels.
Iowa's best protection against Minnesota intercepting them is the fact that McNamara can't throw far enough to get it to the Minnesota defensive backs.
I'm not disagreeing with that at all. We have a Friday night game. This is our feature game of the week. Illinois at Nebraska, a top 25 showdown. Friday night, 7 o'clock on Fox. The Huskers come in an 8-point favorite, over under at 43. I think Nebraska actually wins big here, but that's my opinion, and I always go with my gut, which is not a smart thing to do when it comes to betting. Scott, does Nebraska cover the 8 points here?
Listen, I remember you started the season like 8-0 last year or something like that through the first 2 or 3 weeks. So trust the gut, even though there's less of it to trust nowadays than you had going for you last year. So I don't know if that's affecting the betting or not. But as far as this line, Nebraska was as high as 10 on Monday in some shops, dropped all the way down to 7.5. It's 8, as you see there. There's probably 70% of the books are still stuck on 7.5. I think the money's come in on the wrong team at this point. I think Nebraska covers this number. And you guys know I'm real careful when it comes to wanting to back the Huskers over the years, and it's served me well. But this line would have been 9.5 before last week's games. So now it's down to 7.5. I look at Illinois and what they've done thus far. They only led Central Michigan by 7 at the half, 13-6. Central Michigan, I saw some people talking about, well, CMU's a lot better than UTEP, who Nebraska beat in the opener. Well, CMU's 115th in the nation power rating, so let's not get too crazy about that. But they finished with 142 rushing yards on over 4 yards per carry. And then Altmaier was effective for Illinois. And I'm talking about CMU ran the ball. Altmaier was effective for Illinois. They forced a pick while hanging on to the ball themselves. They gave up 186 yards on 5.5 yards per carry to Kansas in that game a couple of weeks ago. And what struck me about that, not just that they gave up all that rushing yardage, but Illinois didn't even get 80 yards on the ground. They ran for 79 on 34 carries against the Kansas Jayhawks. They were fortunate because of one, Jalen Daniels, who's having a real rough time hanging onto the football while he's doing his Jeff Sims routine. But listen, the Huskers, they should be able to run and stop the run. That's what I really feel about this game. And, I know you got an offensive lineman, a really good offensive lineman who's suspended now for Nebraska, but there was nothing fluky about anything Nebraska's done thus far. I'd like to see him play a full 4 quarters, come out strong like they have, and then keep playing well, although the UTEP game was a little shaky for a quarter or so. But, both teams have great metrics in the area that I'm going to talk about, which is the Huskers have allowed less than 2.5 points per opportunity. That metric, which is a metric that's used to see how a defense does after the opposing offense gets inside your own 40. They're only giving up 2.5 points per opportunity. And again, the other team gets a ball inside the 40. Nebraska is not letting them get in the end zone. I like that. Illinois has been pretty good at that. They've also got a lot of help from turnovers. Again, I don't like this Illinois ground game. I don't think they're that good. I think the defense is pretty good. I think Nebraska ends up winning by double digits. And I'm not a guy, as you know, who jumps on Nebraska each week.
Steven has this to ask: how do the Huskers wide receivers match up with the Illinois secondary?
I like Nebraska's receiving room. I do. They're quick. They know where to be. Dylan Raiola puts the ball on target. They don't have to wait for it. They don't have to reach behind him. It's going to be an interesting situation because I think Nebraska really should. I really believe this. They should develop the running game first. Watch what Kansas did. Again, Kansas almost 200 yards rushing against this defense and over 5 yards per pop. So, I'd like to see Nebraska develop the ground game out of the blocks and then work off of that. I think they'll have the advantage, wide receivers against that secondary, although the Illinois DBs are really strong. It's not like they don't have future NFLers on that defense. So Nebraska is not going to have it easy. I just think eventually they wear through this team because I think the Illini defense is going to be hurt by their lack of offense.
Game dogs active tonight. Does Scott think Illinois' run D will be able to hold up? Nebraska running back should be fresh after for the conference opener. Illinois will have the biggest defensive line or front Nebraska O-line has seen all year.
Yeah, I think Nebraska can wear them down. And again, because of just watching like what happened against Kansas, even Central Michigan. Central Michigan was able to run without a problem against Illinois for 2.5 quarters in that game. So, listen, I never want to throw aside what Brett Bielema could bring to a game plan and how his team plays for him. But I do believe that Nebraska is going to be too strong up front eventually. And again, it's going to come down to time of possession. They do what they did last week against Northern Iowa, and all of a sudden Nebraska's trailing in the second half. So they got to have good, sustained drives, get the other team off the field quick, which I think the Nebraska defense can do, and then sustain those drives and pile up those time of possession minutes. Last week was an embarrassment with TOP.
All right, bonus game. I haven't told anybody about you guys about this. Rob, can you handicap the Augustana Northern State game that you're going to on Saturday?
Oh, that's going to be brutal. Northern State's not very good.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Augustana, they lost a couple of NFL guys off of last year's team. So that's going to be a little bit tough. And it's had some injuries at quarterback. One guy was out last week with a concussion. They got a MCL injury on another guy this week. And so that's one of those things. You lose a couple of guys from some injury. Makes it a little tough. I still think Augustana wins this one.
Serious question.
Level of competition. They got that big game last week, man. That's a tough opponent for a D2 team to take on,
And they stayed competitive. I mean, it was Augustana forced, I got to double. I think it was 3 turnovers in the game. They forced 3 turnovers, 1 fumble, 2 picks. Just couldn't get it into the end zone. But again, like I said, they were out there without one of their quarterbacks. Their other quarterback had a bit of a knee injury in the game. I don't think it's going to be too serious, but big chunk of the second half, they were out there with a couple of freshmen at quarterback. So, and still stayed competitive, moved the ball. I think they actually hit 1 out on time of possession.
Cody says, Trav, can we get an update on the basement? Call Owen. Just call Owen. Okay, I'm in my kitchen right now. Rob's been down in the basement. It's a shell of itself. But if you want to know when I get back in the studio, call Owen. Just you can tweet at him.
After he gets done with yours, can he come out here and do my office here? I'm tired of the sportsbook backdrop and the green screen, and that was a cool ass basement you had last year, or the year before.
And we're gonna go like real fancy. We were looking at like acoustical wood panel. I mean, wow. This project is getting, it's probably going to be more expensive, but at the end of the day, if we're going to do it right, I said we might as well go ahead and do it. Doctor, I do have a legitimate question for you, and Scott, I want to know how you feel about it too. And that is Tua Tagovailoa from the National Football League.
The concussions.
Yeah, I mean, shouldn't the league – I said this on my radio show earlier this week. There should be a rule in the National Football League where if you hit a certain amount of concussions, you're done. It's mandatory retirement because we now know about CTE. We know the damage that can be done. Should the NFL step in and say, you're done?
I mean, I don't know if that's the NFL's place to do.
Then you can't.
I don't think there ought to be a rule that says, "Hey, you've had X number of concussions, you don't get to play anymore." Now, at the same time, I think that's a personal decision for the player. I mean, I think he needs to step back, and say, "Hey, I mean, take a look at this. Get together with his family." Get together with those people close around him and make a decision here. And I mean, it's not like the whole concussion CTE thing. It's not that new of a thing. We always knew about it. I mean, back when I played, I mean, geez, I think I was in high school still when Well, Daryl Johnson retired from the Cowboys. Troy Aikman, I mean, I was in the league. Well, actually, I had just started med school when Troy Aikman announced he was retiring because of multiple concussions. It's not like we didn't know about this back in the 1980s, 1990s. It was a thing then too, that if you have a few concussions, you start to worry, hey, how is this going to affect you long term? And people made decisions, and I think the guys who were like, yeah, you know what, I'd like to remember who I am when I'm 50 years old. I'm hanging it up. And I think that's it's the right decision. I think it would be a good decision. I don't think it's the NFL's job to step up and say, hey, if you've had X number of these injuries, you don't get to play anymore. Now, it'd be the same kind of thing. Let's say a guy has his 7th knee surgery. Does the NFL step in and say, hey, you know what? You hit the quota on knee injuries. You got to quit now.
You're not comparing apples to oranges, though.
It's not, but there's a fine line here because you're talking about auctioning off body parts, which NFL players have done for decades. Yeah. And it's the thing is that
we're talking about the brain, dude.
And I get it, and that is different. There is a real world difference there. But the question is when it comes to making an enforceable decision from even a legal standpoint, can you tell a guy, hey, if you're still able to play, if your brain is functional enough to come back from that 5th concussion, 3rd concussion, 7th concussion, whatever it is, at this point in time, now maybe you're going to have raging CTE 10 years from now, but at least at this point, if you're able to come back and play, does the NFL have a legal ground to stand on and say, hey, you can't play because of the risk of potential future, right there, freedom of choice? Yeah. I don't think it's a decision that the NFL should be able to make. Now, is the right decision that he retire? Yes. But that's going to be his decision. That needs to be his decision.
Cody says, if they get traded, they got to pass physical, right? Should concussions be a part of that? Maybe it's on the team and not the NFL?
I got to be honest with you. I don't know what I know all NFL teams do concussion. The NFL on the whole does, in fact, do concussion testing. And that's part of an evaluation. I don't know how that plays into this in terms of, hey, can you actually, I would assume if somebody comes in and they're like, okay, you know what, you've had 7 concussions and you can't pass the concussion pre-testing, we're not going to sign you. You just failed the physical. If that's the case, you've got real issues as a player. That if you're still at a playing age as an NFL football player and you're flunking a concussion pre-test, you need to go live with a neurologist because you've got some serious issues. If it's a case of, kind of what we're talking about, though, is a guy who would be able to pass that test. If you've had multiple concussions, but your brain is still functional as far as being an NFL quarterback, that's one of those things where I still think it's on the player.
I agree.
Hey, can we go back to that last comment? I thought that was actually...
Conservative Husker said, if the doctor that your mother has had for 20 plus years gives you a note to return, you can. Kind of joking, kind of not.
I agree with Rob. I really do. I agree with Rob. I think it's up to the player, but I think team doctors look at him. You've got your own doctor who looks after you. You've got to go maybe see a neurologist, and then you make the decision. You look at Mike Webster, to go back a few years and what happened to him, or Jim McMahon, who sometimes seems to have a problem putting sentences together these days. But that's got to be the player. As far as the team, and somebody said this on a show I heard earlier this week, I think a team, NFL should have it where it doesn't go against your payroll if you have to replace a guy who has received concussions like Tua. you can go out there, you can bring somebody in, it doesn't go against you, anything like that. I thought that was a good decision for the teams. But as far as the NFL telling a player you can't play anymore, I'm against that. At the same time, the Players Association better not make a big deal out of it if the NFL is not allowed to tell you to quit. They've got to all of a sudden take a step back, should not be able to sue the team doctor, the team itself, the NFL. I agree with Rob across the board. I think it's up to the player, his family, his doctors, and go from there. I really do.
All right. If you want to work with Scott Spreitzer on a weekly basis, you can do that. Text the word Doc Talk to the number 29022 and get a free $60 trial with premium member picks from Scott. Or you can just visit docsports.com and sign up for the free 60 on the upper left-hand side of the website. So, boys, always another good show. Appreciate the time that you guys give. Excellent advice from Scott Spreitzer. Of course, if you missed any part of the show, it's going to be up on the podcast on YouTube. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and you can go watch it. Guys, have a great week and good luck to everybody's betting.
Go T-Birds.
Absolutely.
Go T-Birds. And I won't get that wrong again, I promise. We'll talk to you next week, every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Central, right here on Behind the Point Spread from Doc Talk Sports.